Okay, record on the computer. Great. Okay, welcome to this little recorded session, part of our Australian Permaculture Convergence online program. I'd love to welcome Andy Goldring, who is the Chief Executive of Permaculture Association over in the UK.
Hi, nice to be here.
Great. We're recording this little session to talk a bit about permaculture in the UK and the amazing work that is happening over there. I think it's really good to be able to bring some of the experiences that Andy and the association have had over a long period of time, and hopefully those of us in Australia can glean some information and ideas and be inspired to do a few of these things over our way. So
it goes both ways. We've got lots of things to learn from each other. So the main thing is to be in communication, I think, and share.
A good first point. Indeed it is. So yes, this little recording is a part of that. So first of all, Andy, do you want to talk a little bit about your own history and what got you into permaculture?
Okay, I can do. Very, very briefly. I mean, I guess my teenage years were sort of more defined by my no. So the Bhopal incident in India, I think when I was 14, 1984, just made me really kind of angry with the world, and I started to realize how badly adults were acting, and all the different problems, and I didn't really want to be involved in that, and I was learning about that, and yeah, I ended up doing a fine art degree in sculpture, make myself unemployable, drop out from the conventional system, and then after that I finished my course, which was great. I really enjoyed it, but I didn't really know what I wanted to actually do with my life. And to cut a very long story short, I ended up in London to see the director's cut of Blade Runner with a friend, and I went to phone my girlfriend then and my wife now, Julie, in a phone box, and there was someone in the phone box, and I recognized them, and as they came out and said, "Hey, I recognize you, let's go for a cup of coffee. How are you? You look really tired. Where have you been?" And he said, "I've been to an international permaculture convergence in Denmark." I said, "Oh, what's permaculture and what's a convergence?" And as he was explaining it to me, it was like getting a Christmas present when you're unwrapping it, and even though you don't know what's inside, it's just what you want. And I kind of found my yes, basically. So yeah, I was very, very lucky. I was sort of dissatisfied with the world, did something else, and then when I went out to look for my yes, I found it in permaculture. And because I had no responsibility, I was able to really devote my time. And I'm a kind of, I think, what's called an external processor. So I learn by talking. Everyone knew that I was into this new thing called permaculture. So someone said to me about 2 or 3, 4 months later, "Oh, Andy, did you know there's this environmental design and permaculture course at Bradford University?" So I applied for that. I did that, and it turned out that it was one of the best funded courses ever. Some local government money left over, didn't know what to do with it. They put this course on, and I met loads of people in the network, and I had a really good 4-month kind of experience of environmental design with a guy called Russell Withers, who's from New Zealand, and then a colleague of his who helped design Milton Keynes in the UK, and then loads of different people from permaculture from the UK. And I just fell into it on one level you could say I was quite lucky, but I was sort of open and ready for it. And then I'm just a helper, so I just started helping.
It certainly sounds like part of that ethos, which I certainly got when I first got into permaculture, which was that instead of just being angry at the world, having a way to create a world that
Yeah.
we would like to see, rather than
Yeah.
just trying to break down the one that we didn't like.
Exactly, and it's that emphasis on design. I mean, in a designer's manual, there's that there's a graphic of like a pig rubbing itself against a post, and but beautiful diagrams. It just made so much sense. It just seems so much more intelligent,
Yeah,
than the way that you can see politicians acting in the world.
yeah.
I'm like, here's a group that's actually using its intelligence with an ethical framework to make the world a better place.
Yeah,
based on how nature works. Like, why aren't we just why are we not all doing that anyway?
And
So,
how do we get
it
more
just made a
people
lot of
to do it? I suppose that's one of the reasons why I'm interviewing you today, is to look at how we can get more people to be aware of it and to practice as well. So what so then your journey would have led you to becoming part of the Permaculture Association, and then, so how long ago was that?
I did my course in '93, and in '94 I went to, I think '93 I went to my first convergence at a place called Redfields in Buckinghamshire, and then '94 I was volunteering for the education side, and I volunteered to organise the educators meeting at the convergence, and then by '95 I was continued to volunteer, and then '96 they asked if I could be a trustee, and I did. and then by '99 I was coordinator, and it in a way it's like the reason they needed me to do this is because they were struggling, and actually they found, oh, here's this young person with loads of energy, let's get him to do a bit more. Which is, fair enough. But being Permaculture magazine had gone off on its own direction, which was difficult at the time. It was a very, very good move in many, many ways, but it was difficult for everyone involved. But I wasn't part of that. I didn't know anything about that. So there'd been a bit of a split and a falling out. It worked out well in the end, but that falling out phase I didn't know about, so I was able to kind of come in, and with my youthful ignorance I was able to talk to different people and just kind of help stitch things back together a bit. But a lot of people wanted the magazine, so membership dropped, and it was a quite a rocky time, which I didn't really know, I wasn't really aware of at that point. And so it put a lot of strain on the trustees. They were struggling to recruit people, and then essentially the team in Wales ran out of energy, and the trustee said to me, well, why don't you look after it for a year? So I said, well, okay. It looks like a lot of work, but I'll do that. And what I realized was that basically the Permaculture Association had been run on a kind of 3-year burnout cycle, pretty much consistently from the beginning. So people were like really into it, like, yay, great permaculture, yay, really into making stuff happen. Permaculture Association, brilliant way to make this happen. Oh, it's actually quite a lot of work. Oh, everybody wants me to do stuff. I'm not getting enough pay. I'm not getting enough support. I don't want to do it anymore. And that kind of took about 3 years.
And was this sorry, was this all like pretty much volunteer for everyone at that time?
Well, volunteer with little bits of pay and part-time work, and no one was being exploited as such. It's just it was difficult. We weren't getting funds. We were. I remember reading the one of the early pioneers in the Permaculture Association wrote a little piece, I think, when we were celebrating 20 years of being around, and said that back at the beginning, he felt like people treated permaculture like the lunatic fringe of the alternative movement. It was permaculture was very much in the alternative movement in the UK. It wasn't it could have been adopted by farmers, but it was adopted by kind of quite a radical group, and that's fine and that's good. But it I think it felt itself to be quite fringe.
Yes.
And it didn't, you know, all its income was basically membership, which was relatively small. But the reason I mentioned this burnout cycle, it's not to say, you know, it's quite common, but like any pattern, when you recognize a pattern, you can do something with it. And I think my main thing was, well, actually, I'm not trained in management. I'm not trained in running organizations. I'm not trained in, you know, in the accounts or any of these different things, but I'm quite good at sticking with things. So if maybe I can stick with it longer, we can create enough stability for things to start to settle down a bit. And you know, if I've got a claim to fame, it's I just stuck at it longer.
Well, sometimes people get thrust into these positions without necessarily wanting to, and it can be the best fit.
Yeah, it can be. Sure.
Is there a moment you can remember where you think that cycle was kind of broken, or where it kind of like evolved more, like maybe some things you can remember that where more stability was generated, or kind of how that progressed from that boom and bust cycle to something more sustainable?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things. I mean, one was when essentially I needed a little bit more money in order to buy a house, a very, very cheap house, but I still needed a small pay rise, because to even get the absolute minimum mortgage, my pay wasn't covering the absolute minimum. So I needed this tiny little pay rise. And I remember one of the trustees saying, I can't believe we're even paying you. This is a mission, you know, we should all be doing this for free. And I said, well, that's great. Find someone that's willing to do that, and I'll go and work in a supermarket so I can have a house for my kids. And a couple of other trustees said, no, we've got to pay Andy properly, or you know, a little bit more. And the reason I mentioned that was I think there was a certain poverty consciousness, like we weren't actually willing to handle money. Right, but you're an organization, you've got to be able to handle money. Right, so we said, come on, this is an indicator that we need to think differently about how we're handling our money. So that was one. I think another point was when we decided to actually get some grant funding in, and that's been difficult, but it's also been very good, and that helps us to build some capacity in various different ways. I think another one was a bit of a board of trustees crisis, where there's a disagreement in the board, and we you know, it was quite difficult and emotional, but we used that as a prompt to think really well about our governance and really try to understand what the difference is between the board that's doing the governing and the kind of staff team that's doing the work. And how do you kind of differentiate between those two different roles? And how do you give more clarity to both those different roles, so the people that are, you know, at the board aren't constantly interfering in what the staff are doing? You know, that's a really, really important challenge, because the board have got a very important role, which is policy. It's to direct the long-term organisation, to make sure that it has a clear identity and purpose, and that the people working in the organisation have clarity about what they can and can't do in order to run the organisation and deliver its aims.
Yeah.
So we came across something called policy governance, and we kind of converted, and that basically really put the board on a much clearer footing. Okay, they've got like a clear job description, if you like, and all the evidence suggests that basically good governance is a key to being a successful organisation. So although it came about by accident, in the sense of it was a kind of falling out, I had been looking at various different governance models, and I think Andrew Langford had suggested policy governance a few years before. So I dusted those ideas off and said, let's have a look. So that was important, getting the governance right. I mean, I think maybe one other thing I'd say is the first time we hired someone because they were skilled in the task, not because they were into permaculture. And you know, it's great if you can get both, but if you need a bookkeeper, what you need is someone that can really do the books. And then they can learn about permaculture and be really inspired and get active, which is what happened, or what has happened consistently. But we now really try to hire for the skills that are needed, obviously always wanting as a desirable that people are skilled in permaculture, but really there's a craft to running a membership organization, just like there's a craft to running a plant nursery or a I don't know, a car sales shop. You know, there are certain skills that are needed to run a membership organization, and when you recognize what kind of craft area you're in, getting good at those skills is really key. So, you know, it's quite boring things that have helped us, like getting our database right, understanding how to do the finances well. You know, those kinds of skills actually mean that you can then do all the exciting stuff around permaculture because you've got a solid base.
And I can reflect in some ways about the organising of this Australian permaculture convergence. With we've been very blessed with the South Australian. The team is made up of almost 25 volunteers based in different areas around program and around logistics and around media and marketing and around the finance and yes, we've had some people, like, we've been amazed at these people who are able to do their own work in their different areas, and we've been able to bring that together in quite a cohesive manner. But I agree with allowing people to shine in their different skill sets and focus on those areas has enabled us to work effectively and hopefully to create what will be a great convergence. But it's we haven't tried to take on everything, and we've it's been well, we're all still friends, and in fact, as I said to the core crew the other day, we've actually become better friends. So that's, I suppose, part of the proof in the pudding, so to speak. But if we could move forward, so based on that kind of strong that kind of foundational building that you've been talking about, which I think is essential for the longevity of an organisation. Could you describe for us where the Permaculture Association is now and how it operates? And
okay, fine. So we've got a number of different strands of work. So there's the charitable trading work that we do, where basically we're making a sale. So that's like membership, people buy membership, people buy online courses, people buy attendance at events, people buy diploma. I think that's most, so membership, events, diploma, online learning, some educator membership. So they're the things that we sort of sell, which I'll come back to. And all the charitable trading is, in the UK, it's what's called primary trading. So as a charity, if the trading that you're doing is delivering your mission, your education, your kind of charitable objects, charitable purposes, then you can do as much as you like. So when we run events, we're running events about permaculture to help people learn about permaculture. When we're delivering the diploma, we're helping people to deepen their permaculture skills. When we our membership scheme is helping people to, you know, make connections to a network, develop their skills and work together. So we want to grow all of that, not because we want to make money, but because we want to grow our mission. Then we've got some work which is grant funded, and we tried to do the grant funded work in a way which means that we're not dependent on it. brings us new skills and new kind of infrastructure or new sets of learning in the network that will then be useful ongoing, but not something that we're going to be dependent on forever. So that doesn't always work, but on the whole, we try and bring the grant funding in to do almost like sort of homeopathic, you know, it gives you a kind of, maybe not homeopathic, that may be the wrong phrase, but it's like it gives you a boost, but you shouldn't rely on it.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
it's kind of building your framework to then
yeah, so
be able to keep moving on from.
So a good example of a current, two current pieces of work we've done or just completing at the moment. There's one called IACT, which is all about basically supporting local groups and local projects to set up or to develop their sort of local learning centre or demonstration centre. So building up those skills, the toolkits, access to resources, insights, case studies that make it, that support people to set up a local place that can be helping people learn about permaculture and how it can address climate change and biodiversity and other issues, local needs, etc. So it's not a project we need to keep doing. Once we've got that resource can then be used in the network ongoing. And another one is for community climate coaches, which is sort of developing a new skill set around helping people in the community to take action on climate change, and recognizing that a lot of people in the permaculture network have got a lot of relevant skills and insights. So this is giving people a kind of an extra string to their bow that they can, and not just an extra string to their bow, but also another way of, you know, lots of people are engaged on and worried about climate change. So this is a good way in to connect with people, and then through that you can then start bringing in the kind of permaculture solutions as part of that process.
So
that's some grant funded work.
Sorry, you see that as an entry point into
it's a great entry point.
Greater permaculture learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the other sort of strand of work we do is more member led. So that's our education working group, diploma working group, Permaculture Scotland, Paramaifu Cymru, or which is Permaculture Wales, supporting members to take things forward. So with some staff involvement, but primarily, you know, members taking the initiative. So so we've got charitable trading, the kind of members taking initiative, and the grant funded work. And I think one of the highlights at the moment is the work that we're doing on the land network, which is the network of demonstration sites. So we're building up that map, you know, continuing to make permaculture very accessible. This was one of the things that we got grant funding for, you know, like 2009 or something, was to think about what would it look like to have a demonstration network. And we created it and did a lot of training, and then we didn't get any grant funding for quite some years, which was okay. It was fine because there'd been such a boost of energy into the network anyway that kind of sustained it for quite some time. And then more recently we've had another little grant, and we're looking at how we can kind of put another boost of energy into the network. You can't constantly be providing stuff for people because they haven't got time to do it, or you know, you get a boost of learning, a boost of input, and then you kind of need some time to incorporate it into your life and into your work. So we're doing the next boost at the moment.
And you have an events coordinator who helps with not just the national gatherings, but a lot of the local ones as well, to help to kind of bring more you know, more kind of in a way, I suppose, providing your you know, your knowledge base and the skills and the kind of the checklists, the framework, so that those local convergences can basically utilize all that stored knowledge to run events.
Dan is the events coordinator, runs the convergence. We've been delivering European Permaculture Convergence with in partnership with other European groups. Yeah, we support events around the UK. Some of the events around the UK have got as much skill as we have. Like London Permaculture Festival is now a very, very highly sophisticated, annual event, which brings in, 600, 700, 800 people. I think it was nearing 1,000 people just before COVID. But what we do is each year is we say, okay, who's running the events? Let's get everyone together. Let's talk about timing. Let's talk about how we can support each other. Are there any new resources we all need? So Dan does do that and make sure that we have a good kind of collective program of action. There's not too many clashes.
Yeah.
And things like insurance and public liability, health risk assessments, all those kinds of things. You can share skills on.
Yeah, which take a lot of time to develop the knowledge on, but once they're there, if that can be shared, then that just saves so much time and energy for everybody else.
And in many ways, that I think is the real big challenge for permaculture globally, is we've got some pockets of very good skill and very accomplished practice. We were talking earlier about Ego and Permatil and the fantastic work they're doing do there, and Rosemary Morrow with the Permaculture and Refugees, Morag Gamble, Permaculture Education. Around the world, there are pockets of really fantastic skill, but the need is enormous and the interest is enormous, absolutely enormous. And I feel like globally, we've got to find more of a way to connect and share our skills so that, someone starting up a project in Mozambique has got access to the kind of, maybe not the same level of resource, but at least can make use of the resources that we do have more easily. And I think that's an area where we really need to make some progress quite fast, because the world's really interested in permaculture, and I think whether or not they know about the word, what we are delivering and our approach is so right for the moment. So we've got to find a way to step up a bit, I think. And I think part of that stepping up is connecting with each other. Just like in a permaculture design, it's how do you create beneficial relationships between different elements in the system? So we've got these different national and local and regional hubs. If we can connect them better, then they can support more to happen.
It's like that mycelial network that which we'll be looking at within the convergence. There's a few presenters and a few workshops where we'll be looking at that kind of ways of scaling up and ways of being more effective. And I hope this little conversation contributes to that as well. So to get back to the association a bit, so a lot of people in Australia think that UK is just so small, you could walk from one side to the other in about half an hour, but
maybe not half an hour.
Well, 40 minutes. But it's actually the way that the association works is, utilizing, really effective remote learning skills, but keeping everyone connected. As you said, we need to keep people up to date, keep the conversations going. So how many people, so you have the stand-up meetings every week, which I was a part of when I was over there. And do you want to explain a little bit about how many people there are and how people keep connected and abreast of projects?
Yeah, so the Permaculture Association, we have at the moment, I think we have 16 part-time workers. We've got 9 trustees on board. We've got education working group, diploma working group, Permaculture Scotland, Permaculture Wales. I've probably missed something else. There's various other things going on, project groups. and essentially we run a really good online office. So we use a kind of central communication system called Slack, which you've probably heard of. And then we have a weekly stand-up meeting on a Tuesday morning where we try and get as many people as possible to just come in and really just check in. Hi, this is how I am. This is what's been going on. This is what I need to do the next week or two. Because, you know, if you're working from home, then you need that check-in and that connection. But yeah, so I guess we have tried to get good at the online side because it's more cost effective. It meant that we could recruit people that weren't living in Leeds. You know, previously everything was done in this office in Leeds, and then by recruiting people from anywhere, it meant we got more applications and better skills. But yeah, that connecting up, I think it's a combination of Zoom calls, the weekly stand-up, Slack messaging, but then we do try and get together at least 2 or 3 times a year to talk and go to the pub, do something together that kind of builds the social capital, I guess you could say.
Indeed,
Camaraderie.
important. Mm.
It is really.
So I'm aware that the time is running short. We could keep going for a long time, but one thing I really wanted to touch on was Permaculture Association has had many external partnerships, either with other movements within the UK or different organisations, councils and governments, and kind of, do you want to talk a bit more about that side of how permaculture has managed to, permaculture generally, but also the association has managed to kind of connect beyond just the permaculture sphere to broaden its reach?
Yeah, I mean, it's just been a deliberate choice to do it. I mean, I think for us, for me, I've always seen permaculture as being part of the solution, but not the whole thing. You know, we are enriched by working with farmer organisations, by groups working on energy, with green housing groups, with cooperatives, and those are, they bring us something, their skill and their insight and their networks, and then we bring them something, and then you can exchange ideas, and permaculture reaches further, and the people doing permaculture already have got deeper skills and more knowledge. So I think it's a conscious choice and deliberate choice to do it. We've done it in various different ways. So we do, you know, partnership funded projects, so we get money in. We've been entrepreneurial. We had a thing called Control Shift, where we did a series of events which were deliberately bringing all the different groups together that were acting on, you know, trying to create a kind of better world, and work with Transition Network and Solidarity Economy Association, and, you know, all sorts of different groups. And we had a brilliant exchange. So one of the events in Wigan, I mean, you know, 200 people for 2 or 3 days, just really sharing their skills in a quite an intense way. And people, you know, that was 5-6 years ago, and people still, do you remember that? That was such a, I learned so much. And permaculture reached a lot of people it just would not have reached otherwise.
Yeah.
And so I think there's lots of ways that we do it and have done it, which aren't necessarily very innovative, but it's more that recognition that, I mean, in a way, you could take kind of David Holmgren's permaculture flower. Each petal has got a whole stack of different organizations and networks.
Yeah. So
how do we start to come into a relationship with them? So we need to create opportunities for that, really, I think, which sometimes means creating a space where people can come to us, but also sometimes means that we need to take time out to go to their spaces and engage in their invitations. So I think more than anything else, it's the desire to do it. Once you've made that kind of decision, all sorts of opportunities are there. So yeah, I think it's seeing permaculture as having a particular set of skills and insights, and a framework which is incredibly powerful. But yeah, there's a lot of other people doing great work too.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I think that's one of the key for me. That design framework is such a almost unique part of permaculture, which is something that is so good, invaluable to bring to the table in terms of showing other groups who are like, in a way, like how that connection can be made, tangible. And so maybe that's a good segue into the Leeds project that you've been involved with in terms of was the permaculture design for Leeds.
Getting there. So yeah, part of the Climate Action Leeds project, with my other hat on, I've got a 1-day-a-week job, and I'm setting up and running a hub for climate action. We're calling it Imagine Leeds, because if you can't imagine something, you can't make it happen. And we're trying to imagine what would a zero carbon, nature friendly, socially just Leeds look like by the 2030s. So it's a space for sort of facilitation of groups, bringing information and knowledge together, literally kind of looking at the map, bringing things out like agroforestry and silvopasture and permaculture and green building techniques, like literally making them visible, and then curating conversations around how we can make it happen. Leeds has got a roadmap developed by the Climate Commission, so we're saying, well, who's doing the different parts of it, bring them together, identify what the gaps are. So really what we're doing is we're creating a space where we can design together across sectors, and so not just activists, but also academics, also people from government agencies, people from business, because people in all of these different spheres of life are worried about climate change. So we're creating a space, and one of the ways that I've tried to explain it to people is, if you want to find out about Leeds in the past, there are 8 really good museums, a couple of art galleries, you can find out what happened before. If you want to find out what's happening in Leeds right now, it's quite hard.
Yeah.
And if you want to find out what's going to happen in Leeds in the future, there's nowhere. But given that humanity is about to go through the biggest transformation, it must go through the biggest transformation it's ever gone through in the shortest period of time ever. We need a 7% per annum cut in our emissions. And we've got huge amounts to do on biodiversity, etc., etc. All that.
Yes, yeah.
We've got this massive transformation to make. Surely it makes sense to have somewhere, an actual place in every town and city where you can work on that problem together, which is designed to bring everyone together. It's got the tools, it's got the processes, it's got the information it needs to make good decisions. So that's what we're doing. And we've only been open a very short period of time. We're already attracting lots of interest from activists, but also really interesting stuff like West Yorkshire is doing a strategy for nature, and the person managing that is really, really very unsupported. Came across what we're doing, is like, wow, can I come and work here? Like, yeah, of course you can. So we're going to be able to bring permaculture ideas into the design for West Yorkshire's biodiversity, which means land use for West Yorkshire as a whole, which means like a massive piece of land. So I think part of our skill set in permaculture is that group work, that participation, the collective design, the co-design, the co-production. And if we can create spaces in towns and cities where that can happen on an ongoing basis, we can be helping people solve problems.
And is there somewhere where people who are watching this, people in Australia, like, will there be a website and kind of like things that we can access to kind of
not yet. I mean, there's a website generally, Climate Action Leeds .org.uk, I think. But we're just very early stages, so we haven't written up anything much. There's not very much on the web about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the future, I'll come to your next convergence and just talk to you about climate action leads.
Sounds great.
If it's as successful as I hope it will be, then yes, I'd very, very willingly come back and say more.
It sounds like a fantastic model. So certainly wish you all the best for developing, or being part of that development.
Thanks.
Are there any other like future things for Permaculture Association, for Andy, for leads, for?
Well, like I said earlier, I mean, we're just recruiting for an international coordinator. So we've got a huge response, I think 109 applications. We want to be connecting with other initiatives around the world so that collectively we can do more to support the emerging new projects, especially in Global South. We know there's a lot of people wanting support. So yeah, I guess an important future step for me is more connection. Permaculture Australia, I mean, it sounds like you think we're doing a good job, but there's some fantastic work going on in Australia. And I think if we can learn from each other and connect up more what we're all doing well, actually between us, we're doing a really good job and build up some skills in particular areas, but I think we can really raise our game quite substantially. So we're going to invest in someone that's there to do that linking. So yeah, hopefully we'll be in touch soon.
That sounds great. Well, I know you're very busy, so we'll leave this interview here for now.
Okay. Thanks, Lachlan.
Thanks very much, Andy. It's been fantastic to have.
And hi to everyone out there, and hope thanks for all that you're doing. It's great. It's all needed. The big things and the little things.
Indeed. So yeah, all the best for all your work over in the UK, and look forward to seeing more of it soon.
Thanks.
Okay.
See you later.